The evolved skin, what we call the evolved skin. We talk about the somatic skins a lot here at the Prestige and on this Prestige channel. If you don't know yours, take a minute or 5 and take the 15-question quiz in the description. It will tell you your orientation, whether you're a sage, warrior, shapeshifter, or asset. These are not woo-woo metaphysical personality traits. They are nervous system orientations that we live into. All of us have access to all 4, but most of us are dominated by one of these orientations due to an initial act of genius and response to pressure when we're young. I talk about that in another video called the native skin. But the way this normally works is that we have an initial response. The native skin is an act of genius where our nervous system organizes a coherent response to pressure and life. And then depending on the intensity or power of that thing, it winds up becoming our first signal of safety. The warrior learns, to use force. The sage learns to use focus or reasoning. The shapeshifter learns to adapt and avoid, and the asset learns to feel. They work. So we lean into them again, and then they wind up becoming practiced and repetitive, and then they wind up becoming what we call the conditioned skin, which is a way of being in the world, and that's where this original act of genius becomes effectively repetitive character trait or traits. We wind up doing them all the time, and then we start to think, well, this is who I am. This is my identity. I'm the tough guy that winds up becoming a soldier, or I am the sensate that winds up becoming a yogi. And so we live into these forms and molds over time that we think are, well, it's just the way that I am. When it turns out we just wound up leaning into one of these categories early and then giving it more attention and more love. I'll talk about how to cultivate all 4, which is through capacity, in other videos. But it's fascinating to think that character really stems from capacity in one of these 4 that is just repeated over and over again. Now that has advantages and it has disadvantages. The conditioned skin is one that solves the problems of pressure. We can rely on it. It becomes who we are, right? The warrior can lean into problems, can generate tension and focus and grit through problems in ways that the other skins can't. The asset can rely on intuition, sense and feel, and organize the field in ways that give them options. And so the power of these skins becomes obvious at times when they work. And the problem is, a lot of times we outgrow them, or we try to apply tactics that work in certain situations, in situations where they don't so much. We can all think of situations where gritting and bearing it, oftentimes with family, or if you have kids or something like this, the head down, plowing through problems doesn't work with people that you need to be more sensitive with, obviously. For the sensate trying to form a business, there are times where you got to suck it up and do the work, and it's not about feeling your way through things. It might require levels of effort and grit that you hadn't prepared for. And so most people just default and they say, well, it's not really for me. It's not how I feel or orient. And it's like, well, no, it's not how you have oriented or felt. But you've got range. Your nervous system can adopt all 4 of these skins with training if you can recognize your dominant skin and learn to inhabit it consciously. So we move from unconscious habitation of a skin, the conditioned skin, into conscious utilization of it through awareness. That winds up becoming cultivated and amplified through capacity in each one of those skins. I'll talk about that in another video. But once you've developed the skin and are able to inhabit it in real time and even under pressure and say, okay, these are my defaults and impulses. I'm feeling the need to generate tension right now as a warrior, let's say. Once I recognize that, I can do one of 2 things. I can either allow myself to integrate and cohere and do that with intention, or if I've cultivated some capacity in the other skins, I can recognize that that default doesn't need to exist. I can stack my frame, drop my breath, release some of that tension, adopt a little bit more shapeshifter in the moment, and find myself with a lot more options to navigate this complex situation. That's what we mean by the evolved skin. One that I can inhabit consciously and also choose whether or not I want to retain or adopt another mode of operating in the next few minutes. any of the other four. Very cool stuff. And it may sound a little bit like woo-woo metaphysics the first time you hear it, but once you start to break this down, as we do, into measurable markers of conditioning and development and training with each one of these skins and how those correlate over time to these different nervous system orientations, that it's no longer about being the warrior, but using the warrior as needed, or the sage, or the shapeshifter. What an empowering state to be able to float between all four and choose who you're going to be in the next few minutes. Badass. So yeah, we coach this stuff at the Prestige, along with having extraordinary monthly, just about, events, each one a new world unto themselves to give you exposure to a side of your somatic range, each one with a new concept, new world, new rules and order. It's very exciting stuff. Check us out, links in the description, and subscribe. Just subscribe. What's it going to cost you?